She couldn't speak, but her drawings told a horror story no one wanted to believe, until a renowned speech therapist saw what the stepfather was hiding. Before we begin, please leave a comment about this story and give it a rating from 1 to 10. How are you feeling today? If you're carrying something heavy in your heart, I'm here to listen. This story reminds us that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most important messages, and that truth has many ways of revealing itself. The afternoon sun filtered through the kitchen window of the suburban house on Maple Street, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. 7-year-old Lily Chen sat at the wooden table, her small hands moving rapidly across a piece of paper with colored pencils. Her dark hair fell forward, hiding her face as she concentrated on the drawing taking shape before her. She had not spoken a single word in 3 years. The doctor said it was selective mutism triggered by trauma, specifically the car accident that had killed her mother and left Lily hospitalized for 2 months. The medical reports were clear. There was no physical damage to her vocal cords, no neurological reason she couldn't speak. The silence was psychological, a protective shell her young mind had built around unbearable pain. But Lily's stepfather, Marcus Webb, had a different explanation for anyone who would listen. He told neighbors, teachers, and social workers that Lily was broken, that the accident had damaged something fundamental in her brain, that she would probably never be normal again. He said it with such conviction, with such practiced concern in his voice, that most people believed him. What they didn't see was the way his expression changed when no one else was watching. The cold calculation in his eyes when he looked at his stepdaughter. The grip of his hand on her shoulder that was just a little too tight, just a little too controlling. Marcus had married Lily's mother, Jennifer, when Lily was only 3 years old. For a year they had been a normal family, or so it seemed to the outside world. But after Jennifer's death, everything changed. The insurance payout had been substantial, and as Lily's legal guardian, Marcus controlled every penny of it. He also controlled Lily. "What are you drawing now?" Marcus's voice cut through the quiet kitchen like a blade. He stood in the doorway, tall and imposing in his business casual clothes, his arms crossed over his chest. Lily's hand froze mid-stroke. She didn't look up, didn't acknowledge his presence, but her entire body tensed like a rabbit sensing a predator. Marcus walked closer, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. He leaned over her shoulder to examine the drawing. What he saw made his jaw clench. The picture showed a small figure, clearly meant to be a child, huddled in a corner. Above the child loomed a larger, darker figure with an angry red mouth and hands reaching downward. The colors were harsh, blacks, grays, reds. There was no mistaking the emotion conveyed. Fear, pain, desperation. "Stop drawing these ridiculous things," Marcus said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. He snatched the paper from under Lily's hands and crumpled it into a ball. "No one wants to see your morbid imagination." Lily's eyes followed the drawing as Marcus threw it into the trash. Her lips pressed together in a thin line, but she made no sound. She had learned long ago that making noise, crying, sobbing, even breathing too loudly, only made things worse. Marcus grabbed her chin roughly, forcing her to look at him. "You know what the doctor said. You need to focus on getting better, on learning to talk again like a normal child. These disturbing pictures don't help anyone." He released her face with a slight push and walked to the refrigerator, pulling out a beer. "I have a business dinner tonight. You'll go to your room after you clean the kitchen. No TV, no books. Just sit quietly and think about how lucky you are that I'm willing to take care of a defective child." The word defective hung in the air like poison. Lily waited until Marcus left the room before she moved. With careful practiced silence, she retrieved the crumpled drawing from the trash and smoothed it out as best she could. She folded it into a small square and tucked it into the pocket of her jeans, along with all the other drawings she had secretly saved. 53 drawings, each one a page from a diary she couldn't speak aloud. Dr. James Harrison had not planned to be in this particular neighborhood on this particular afternoon. At 65, the renowned speech therapist and founder of the Harrison Center for Communication Disorders had mostly retired from active practice, preferring to focus on research and training the next generation of therapists. But his goddaughter lived 3 houses down from the Webb residence, and he had stopped by to drop off a birthday present for her daughter. As he walked back to his car, something caught his attention. A small figure visible through a kitchen window, sitting alone at a table, moving with an intensity that seemed wrong for such a young child. James paused, his professional instincts triggered. He had spent 40 years working with children who couldn't communicate in conventional ways, and he recognized the body language of a child under stress. The rigid posture, the hunched shoulders, the way her head kept turning slightly toward the doorway as if monitoring for danger. Then a man entered the frame, tall, dominant, angry. James couldn't hear the words being spoken, but he didn't need to. The body language told him everything. The way the man loomed over the child, the way the child froze, the way he grabbed her face with casual brutality. James pulled out his phone and, staying out of sight, took several photographs of what he was witnessing. He told himself it was just precautionary, that he might be misreading the situation. But his gut, honed by decades of experience, told him otherwise. When the man left the room, James watched as the small girl retrieved something from the trash with the careful movements of someone who had learned to be invisible. The sadness in that simple action broke something in his chest. He returned to his car but didn't drive away. Instead, he called his goddaughter. "Rebecca, it's James. Quick question. Do you know the family 3 houses down? The one with the dark blue shutters? The Webbs? Marcus and his stepdaughter. I know of them. Why? The little girl, what's her story?" Rebecca's voice dropped. "Lily. Poor thing hasn't spoken since her mother died in a car accident 3 years ago. Marcus seems to take care of her, but I don't know. There's something off about that situation. She's always alone, always looks scared, but every time anyone asks, Marcus says she's just traumatized and the doctors are working with her. What doctors? I don't know. He's never specific." James thanked her and ended the call. He sat in his car for another 20 minutes, watching the house. What he saw confirmed his worst suspicions. This was not a child being cared for. This was a child being controlled. The next morning, James made several phone calls, first to the school Lily attended, then to Child Protective Services, and finally to his attorney. By noon, he had assembled a picture that made him sick with anger. Lily Chen had not seen a speech therapist in over 2 years, despite Marcus's claims to the contrary. Her school records showed a child who was withdrawn, who never participated in class activities, who ate lunch alone every day. Teachers noted that she was well behaved, but showed signs of anxiety, flinching at sudden movements, avoiding eye contact, exhibiting compulsive behaviors like arranging her pencils in perfect rows. Most damning of all, the insurance payout from Jennifer Chen's death had been substantial, over $2 million, and Marcus had full control of it as Lily's guardian. James knew the pattern. He had seen it before in his decades of practice. This wasn't a traumatized child receiving inadequate care. This was an abused child being deliberately kept silent. But knowing it and proving it were 2 different things. That afternoon, James returned to Maple Street. This time, he rang the doorbell. Marcus answered with the practiced smile of someone comfortable with deception. "Can I help you, Mr. Webb? My name is Dr. James Harrison. I'm a speech therapist who specializes in selective mutism. I live nearby and I heard through the neighborhood that your stepdaughter might benefit from my services." The smile flickered for just a moment, so brief that most people would have missed it. But James was trained to read micro-expressions, and he saw the flash of panic before Marcus recovered. "That's very kind of you, doctor, but Lily is already receiving treatment from specialists." "Wonderful. Which practice are you working with? I know most of the reputable centers in the area. Perhaps we could coordinate care?" Another flicker. "It's a private arrangement, very specialized." "I see." James pulled out his business card. "Well, if you're ever interested in a second opinion, please don't hesitate to reach out. Selective mutism is my particular area of expertise. I've published several papers on trauma-induced communication disorders." Marcus took the card with obvious reluctance. "Thank you, but that won't be necessary. May I ask, when was Lily's last evaluation? I don't see how that's any of your business." James smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, I apologize for overstepping. It's just that in my experience, children with selective mutism benefit greatly from consistent, specialized intervention. The longer they go without proper treatment, the harder it becomes to help them find their voice again." The emphasis on proper treatment was deliberate, and Marcus caught it. His expression hardened. "My stepdaughter is fine. She's being well cared for." "I'm sure she is," James replied. "Still, if you change your mind, I'd be happy to conduct a free evaluation. No obligation." As James walked back to his car, he glanced at the kitchen window. Lily was there, her face barely visible behind the glass. For just a moment their eyes met. In that brief connection, James saw something that confirmed every suspicion he had, a desperate, silent plea for help. That evening, James did something he had never done in his 40-year career. He broke protocol. Using his connections in the medical community, he obtained copies of Lily's original hospital records from the accident. What he found made him furious. The initial evaluations clearly stated that while Lily had suffered psychological trauma, there was no physical reason she couldn't speak. The recommended treatment was intensive therapy, family counseling, and possibly medication if anxiety became severe. None of that had happened. Instead, Marcus had taken Lily home and isolated her. The school records showed no evidence of therapeutic intervention, no counseling sessions, no follow-up care. Marcus had simply told everyone she was receiving treatment, while doing absolutely nothing to help her recover, because he didn't want her to recover. James understood with horrible clarity what was happening. A child who could speak might tell people what was really going on in that house. A child who could speak might reveal that her stepfather wasn't the concerned guardian he pretended to be. A child who could speak might expose the truth about how the insurance money was being used, might talk about the way Marcus treated her when no one else was watching. Marcus needed Lily to stay silent, and he had found the perfect cover story, a traumatized child with a documented medical history of mutism. Who would question it? Who would suspect that her silence was being deliberately maintained? But Lily had found another way to speak. She had found her voice in the only language available to her, drawings, and James was going to make sure someone finally listened. The next morning, James returned to the Webb house with someone Marcus hadn't expected, Detective Sarah Martinez from the Child Abuse Investigation Unit, along with a social worker named Patricia Dean. Marcus opened the door with his customary smile, but it faltered when he saw the official identification. "Mr. Webb, we need to speak with you about your stepdaughter, Lily Chen," Detective Martinez said calmly. "May we come in? What is this about?" Marcus's voice was tight. "We've received a report of concern regarding Lily's welfare. We need to conduct a wellness check and interview both you and the child." "She can't speak," Marcus said quickly. "I've told you people this before. She was in an accident. She has psychological damage."
"We understand that," Patricia Dean said gently, "but there are other ways to communicate. We'd like to see Lily now, please." Marcus had no choice but to let them in. As they entered the living room, James noticed Lily sitting on the stairs, partially hidden but watching everything. Her eyes were wide, her small hands gripping the banister so tightly her knuckles were white. "Lily," Patricia approached slowly, crouching to be at eye level. "My name is Patricia. I'm here to make sure you're okay. Is it all right if we talk for a little while?" Lily's eyes darted to Marcus, checking his reaction. The fear in that simple gesture told Patricia everything she needed to know about the power dynamic in this house. "Mr. Webb," Detective Martinez said firmly, "we need to interview Lily privately. You'll need to wait here." "Absolutely not. She's my stepdaughter. I have a right to be present. Actually, in cases of potential abuse investigations, we're required to interview the child separately. You can certainly contact an attorney if you'd like, but we will be speaking with Lily alone." Marcus's facade finally cracked. "This is ridiculous. That man," he pointed at James, "has some kind of agenda. He's been harassing us, making up stories." Dr. Harrison filed a mandated report based on his professional observations. Detective Martinez interrupted. "We're required by law to investigate all such reports. Now you can cooperate, or I can come back with a court order and make this much more complicated." The threat of legal action made Marcus back down, but his expression promised retribution later. Patricia and Detective Martinez took Lily to the kitchen, while a third social worker stayed with Marcus to ensure he didn't interfere. James waited outside, his heart pounding. Everything depended on what happened next. In the kitchen, Patricia set out paper and colored pencils, the universal language of children who couldn't or wouldn't speak verbally. "Lily," she said gently, "I know talking is hard for you right now. That's okay, but I need to understand how things are for you here. Can you draw me some pictures? Pictures about your life, about how you feel?" For a long moment, Lily just stared at the paper. Then slowly, she picked up a black pencil. What emerged over the next hour was devastating. Picture after picture showed the same themes: a small figure cowering, a large angry figure looming, harsh words represented by jagged shapes, doors locked from the outside, meals withheld, a child alone in darkness. The images were crude but unmistakable in their message. Then Lily did something unexpected. She reached into her pocket and pulled out 53 carefully folded drawings, her secret diary, the evidence she had been saving without even knowing it might one day be used. Patricia's hands trembled as she unfolded each one. The progression was clear. The drawings from 2 years ago showed minor incidents, being yelled at, being ignored. But as time went on, the images became darker. Isolation, hunger, fear, a hand gripping too tight, a closet door closing. "Lily," Detective Martinez said quietly, "these pictures, did they really happen? Can you nod yes or shake your head no?" Lily nodded, tears streaming silently down her face. "Did Marcus do these things to you?" Another nod. "Are you afraid of him?" A vigorous nod accompanied by more tears. Patricia wrapped her arms gently around the trembling child. "You're so brave, sweetheart. You found a way to tell us the truth even though you couldn't use words. We believe you, and we're going to make sure you're safe." In the living room, Marcus Webb was arrested for child abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he finally showed his true face. No more pleasant smiles, no more concerned stepfather act. Just rage at being exposed. "She can't even talk," he shouted as police led him away. "What kind of witness is a mute child? You have nothing." "We have 53 pieces of evidence," Detective Martinez replied coldly, "and they speak volumes."
The investigation that followed revealed the full extent of Marcus's crimes. He had been systematically draining Lily's inheritance through fake medical expenses and therapeutic interventions that never actually happened. He had isolated her from extended family, claiming they were too upsetting for her fragile condition. He had used her silence as a shield, knowing that a child who couldn't speak couldn't expose him. But what he hadn't counted on was that silence comes in many forms, and Lily had been shouting for help the only way she knew how.
6 months later, Lily stood in the office of Dr. James Harrison, now her official therapist and, through a special guardianship arrangement, her legal guardian. The adoption process was underway. James and his wife Margaret had opened their home and hearts to the little girl who had suffered so much. The office was bright and welcoming, filled with books and toys and artwork from hundreds of children James had helped over his long career. Lily sat in her favorite chair, a plush purple armchair that was almost too big for her, holding a piece of paper. "Do you want to show me what you drew today?" James asked gently. Lily held up the picture. It showed 3 figures, a small girl in the middle, a gray-haired man on one side, a woman with kind eyes on the other. They were holding hands. Above them was a yellow sun. The colors were bright, cheerful. The figures were smiling. "That's beautiful," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "Is that you, me and Margaret?" Lily nodded. Then she did something she had done only 3 times in the 6 months since being removed from Marcus's house. Something that made James's heart swell every single time. She opened her mouth and spoke. "Home," she whispered, the word barely audible but perfectly clear. James had to swallow hard against the lump in his throat. "Yes, sweetheart. Home." Progress was slow. Lily's voice was still quiet, still hesitant. She spoke only a few words at a time, and only when she felt completely safe. But each word was a victory, each sentence a step forward on a journey toward healing. Marcus Webb was sentenced to 12 years in prison for child abuse, financial exploitation, and fraud. The insurance money was returned to a trust fund that would support Lily's future, her education, her therapy, her dreams. But more than the money or the justice, what mattered most was that Lily had found her voice again. Not just the literal voice that formed words, but the deeper voice, the one that said, "I matter, I deserve to be heard, I am worthy of love." On her 8th birthday, Lily stood in front of a small gathering in the Harrison home. Friends, family, teachers, therapists, all the people who had helped her on her journey of recovery. In her hands, she held a beautifully bound book. It was called The Silent Sister, and it contained all 53 of her original drawings, along with new ones she had created since coming to live with James and Margaret. At the end of the book was a photograph of Lily smiling, with a caption in her own handwriting, "Sometimes silence speaks loudest of all." "Thank you for listening. I want to read something," Lily said, her voice stronger now, though still soft. Everyone in the room went quiet, respecting the effort it took for her to speak in front of so many people. "When I couldn't talk," she began, reading from a page she had written with James's help, "I thought no one would ever understand what I needed to say. But Dr. Harrison taught me that there are many ways to communicate, through pictures, through writing, through actions. He taught me that my voice matters, even when it's quiet." She looked up at James, who was standing in the back of the room, his eyes glistening with proud tears. "He taught me that people who really care about you will find a way to listen, no matter how you speak. And he taught me that I deserve to be heard." The room erupted in gentle applause. Lily smiled, a real genuine smile that showed no trace of the frightened silent child she had been just a year ago. After the party, as Margaret helped Lily get ready for bed, the little girl pulled out a new drawing from her bedside table. It showed a small bird with a rainbow of colors, its beak open as if singing. Beneath it, in careful letters, Lily had written, "Finding my song. Are you happy here, sweetheart?" Margaret asked, brushing Lily's hair with gentle strokes. Lily thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, very happy. Can I ask you something?" Lily nodded again. "When did you know that you wanted to start speaking again?" Lily was quiet for so long that Margaret thought she might not answer. Then, in her soft but steady voice, she said something profound for such a young child. "When I knew that someone was finally listening." Downstairs, James sat in his study, reviewing notes for his next research paper. The title was already written, "Alternative Communication as Evidence: How Nonverbal Testimony Saved a Child's Life." He looked at the photograph on his desk, Lily's first drawing after coming to live with them. It showed a small hand reaching up toward a larger hand reaching down. Between them was a heart. Margaret entered the study and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You saved her, you know." James shook his head. "No, she saved herself. She found a way to speak when speaking was impossible. I just made sure someone was paying attention." "What will you do with all of this? The drawings, the case study, the research?" "I'm going to make sure that every child welfare worker, every teacher, every therapist knows to look for the silent signs, to understand that children communicate in hundreds of ways, and we have to be willing to listen with more than just our ears." He pulled out another file,
He had already received 7 more referrals for children who weren't speaking but might be trying to communicate in other ways. Children whose silence might be protecting terrible secrets. There are more Lilies out there, he said quietly. Children who are screaming for help in languages we haven't learned to understand yet. But we're going to change that. Margaret squeezed his shoulder. One child at a time, one child at a time. The story closes with the image of a little girl who found her voice by first learning that silence could speak, and a man who understood that listening means more than just hearing words. It's a reminder that truth has many languages, that children are more resilient than we give them credit for, and that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most important messages. This is our message. If a child is trying to communicate with you through drawings, through behavior, through the things they won't say, listen, pay attention. Sometimes a child's silence is the loudest cry for help they can manage, and sometimes one person who truly listens can change everything. What moved you most in this story? Was it Lily's courage in saving her drawings, or James's determination to understand what she couldn't say aloud? Have you ever known a child who was trying to communicate something important in unconventional ways? I want to check in with you. How are you doing today? Are there things you're carrying that feel too heavy to put into words? Remember that there are many ways to express what we feel, and that someone is always willing to listen if we find the courage to reach out. If this story touched your heart, please share it so others remember to pay attention to the children around them. Subscribe for more heartwarming stories about finding your voice, standing up for the vulnerable, and the power of really listening. Thank you for being here and for caring about these important stories. Until next time, remember, every child deserves to be heard, and every voice matters, even the silent ones.